ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to... Ladies and gentlemen, we are talking to Sam Giancana, and the book you're looking at is called Double Cross. And we're very happy to be doing that this afternoon and this evening, and wherever you're watching this. There are a lot of things that keep coming up, and I guess the most important one for me to ask you, Sam, is the title of the book, Double Cross. I mean, it would seem that that would be a Frederick Forsyth novel or something. Or why that phrase, double cross?
Well, I think that really is the crux of what this whole period represented to Sam Giancana, and maybe even have implications for us in the future. That the title of the book comes from a period when Sam Giancana felt that he was double-crossed by the Kennedys. This is in 1963. Specifically, what had transpired earlier, Sam Giancana had worked with the CIA, elements of the CIA, from the early 50s. He had assisted them in munitions and gun running and assisting rebels in other countries, assassination of political people, so that obviously the CIA could not be linked to that kind of activity. So he had a continued relationship throughout the 50s with this organization. Suddenly you have now an intense pressure from the FBI, particularly through the McClellan Commission. Bobby Kennedy held the chief counsel position in that committee, and the scrutiny now on organized crime was becoming much more intense. Right around that period, Joe Kennedy, the father, the patriarch of the Kennedy family, came to Chicago, May 1956, to ask Sam Giancana for his help in removing a contract that was placed on his life by Frank Costello, who was a boss from New York. It seemed that Joe Kennedy would not function as some kind of front man in some business transaction. So he got angry and put a contract on Joe's life. Joe came to Chicago, and at the Ambassador East Hotel, told it to Sam, and Sam said, "If I help you here, what's in it for me?" And he said, "If my son is elected president, you'll have the ear of the president. You're saving his father's life." And at that moment, Sam became an active supporter of the Kennedys, despite Bobby trying, or later on, trying to bring them to justice. And so what we saw happen was, by 1960, by the election, we saw Sam Giancana contributing $500,000 of his own money, getting the Teamsters to skim a couple $1 million off their funds to contribute, had his own soldiers out bringing out the vote, and we see in November 1960, John Kennedy's elected. Sam feels he is now in a position that everyone was going to have to go through him. And little did he know that in December 1960, Jack would make his brother Bobby Attorney General. And at that moment, Sam knew he was being double-crossed, because Bobby wasn't going to lay down.
Was Bobby the fly in the ointment to the whole thing?
I think in many respects he was. I mean, he certainly was the spark, but I have to believe that Bobby and Jack had met with Sam, and Jack and Joe had met my uncle during the primaries. They really knew what the promise was, but I think what happened there was the Kennedys figured that they now occupied the highest office in the land.
They were in charge.
They were in charge, and they were going to erase this marker. I mean, if they couldn't bring this two-bit, gangster down, nobody could. And I think that, in a way, they underestimated not only Sam Giancana, but particularly the enemies they had created at the CIA. This was at the same time that the Bay of Pigs fiasco occurred. Jack Kennedy decided that that he was going to splinter the CIA into 1,000 pieces. He was threatening to pull out his military advisors from Vietnam. So you had all these people around the Kennedys who had a lot of reason to fight for their very survival. And it was through that unique situation that the CIA banded together with the mob, specifically Sam, to assassinate the President of the United States. And when Jack Ruby walked into that basement and shot Lee Harvey Oswald, anybody who understood the hierarchy of the mob knew that Chicago was involved. Jack Ruby came from Chicago in 1947. He was an emissary. He was a club owner. He was their man in Dallas. So when it came time that there was a botched plan, which occurred when Lee Harvey Oswald got apprehended, it naturally fell to anybody who knows how the mob operates. It fell to Jack Ruby to silence the man who could implicate the CIA as well as the mob.
How did we quiet Jack Ruby?
Well, I think Jack Ruby thought he was going to be a patriot, thought he was going to be now loved by all of America, that he got the killer. But I think he also knew that he had no other choice, that when you operate in that world, either you do that or you wind up dead yourself.
You ever questioned, history major, whatever, question the fact, what if Ruby does not kill Oswald? What happens to Sam Giancana? What happens to CIA?
Well, I think it would have been difficult to trace those links back. It would have been a lot of hearsay from a man who was obviously trying to save his own hide. I think one of the real strong points of the way the mob operated, as well as the CIA for that matter, is they insulated themselves. You know, I think to this day, most of the investigators say, well, Carlos Marcello of New Orleans, who was the boss there, along with Santos Trafficante, the boss of Tampa, were the men who were behind the mob association.
Being brought out now, yeah.
Well, you know, if you understand the hierarchy, you understand that Sam Giancana was not going to be implicated. He's the general. You know, you've got your soldiers down in the field, and you're not going to be able to trace it back to that one man. So I think it would have been hard to really get Oswald in a position that people would have believed it.